Have you ever felt that sense of anxiety in a relationship? That sudden sickness that you feel in your stomach, where your body is telling you that something is not right, something feels very off, and then there's a sudden distance from the person that you are in a connection with, and nothing is going the way it actually should. And if you've been in a position where things felt wrong, you felt anxious, and there is something that you couldn't prove in that situation, then this video is for you. Because at the end of the day, all forms of anxiety is not just coming from your trauma. Sometimes it's your intuition speaking to you. Sometimes it's your body actually signaling it to you that something feels off. Your body is basically picking up the truth before your mind can actually understand what is happening. So, if you have ever felt this, let's unpack what your anxiety is probably telling you about your relationship. If you're new here, I'm Vesh and I'm a men's relationship coach and I help men heal their traumas, attachment issues, and wounded masculinity in order for them to pursue meaningful connection with women. Now, if you have any attachment issues like anxious or avoidant, any abandonment traumas, or if you just want to work on anything specifically when it comes to your relationships, you can reach out to me through Instagram, send me the keyword coach to book a consultation with me. So, the first thing I want you all to understand is you are not imagining things, you're probably just sensing something. And I want you all to learn to trust your body. Now, I personally have had both kind of attachments. Early on in my life, I had an avoidant attachment, and later on in my life, I had an anxious attachment. So, when it comes to anxiety itself, right? That's your body's way of telling you that something here doesn't feel safe. Now, anxiety is something that you develop in your childhood when you were stuck in environments, let's say at your home with your parents, where something felt terribly unsafe for you as a child. Think of it this way, when you are perfectly happy, you don't feel anxiety, right? You feel anxiety when the environment shifts, when there is something going wrong in your surrounding. And that is where your body kind of is more sensitive towards picking up that kind of danger and predicting that danger early on. So, not all forms of anxiety is actually bad. You can even reframe to think of anxiety as something that is kind of your superpower to tell you that, hey, something might be off in this certain situation. Now, if you are someone who has an anxious attachment, you would naturally get attracted to someone who has an avoidant attachment. And people with avoidant attachment, they are very disconnected from their emotions altogether. So they don't know how to hold space for their emotions, and they do a little bit of hot and cold because they fear intimacy, they fear vulnerability, and they usually keep people at an arm's distance because they kind of like their independence and they don't want that to go away in a relationship. So, the reason you're feeling anxious is probably because that person is actually not the right person for you. The combination of someone who has an anxious attachment and an avoidant attachment is volcanic to both the people. It's very bad actually for both person to be in that kind of a dynamic, and both have to work on healing it. But at the same time, now that we are speaking about anxiety specifically, I want you all to think of anxiety as something that is signaling to you that this connection is not safe. It's not that you are crazy or it's not that you're losing your mind. There is something in your environment, in that connection, that is causing a deep sense of discomfort in your body. And what if you actually start honoring that feeling? What if you start honoring what you're feeling instead of dismissing that anxiety and instead of trying to distract yourself? And your superpower is your ability to actually read between the lines. Let's say if a woman is saying, I'm fine, but if her actions doesn't suggest the same thing, this is your body actually picking up the inconsistency that is coming through to you. And you also have that ability to understand that love between the two of you is actually shifting, and she might be pulling away or she might be not showing up in the way that she initially did. That is also a reason why your anxiety is rising. So why not trust it instead of actually trying to make that anxiety of yours the bad person here? The second thing I want to talk about is the difference between your trauma and your intuition. So, trauma reacts, your intuition observes. So, trauma actually makes you very reactive. So, if you found yourself in a position where you're constantly messaging that person, you're reaching out to them, you're calling them again and again and again, and you're spiraling, you can't sit still, that is you having a trauma response. But this happen because of something that happened in your outer environment. Whereas intuition doesn't react. Intuition knows, like you know deep inside you, that there is something wrong. There is something that's not going right in the connection, and it's valid for you to feel this anxiety. So intuition is calm, whereas trauma is very reactive. So there is two questions that you can ask yourself. Am I reacting from a place of my old wounds, or am I getting an intuitive download that my mind is not ready to accept, but my body is fighting hard to tell me that it's all in my head? So these are two different kind of things where in one stage you're actually reacting from your childhood pain, and in the second place you're actually reacting from a place of knowing that something is terribly off. That is why you feel that sense of anxiety. Because sometimes what I've seen is intuitive men even gaslight themselves by saying that I am overthinking. But sometimes there is truth in what you're thinking. The third thing I want to talk about is the pain that you're feeling might actually be the truth that your mind is trying to hide and avoid. Maybe you'd internally know that this connection is not meant to work out. Maybe your gut feeling is telling you that this person isn't right for you, but you are actually fighting that intuition. This is where you enter a state of extreme anxiety and you start panicking because you're not listening to your own self. You are not listening to your body. Sometimes anxiety isn't caused by what isn't happening, but sometimes anxiety is caused because you are pretending that something that is happening is not actually happening. You're trying to gaslight yourself, you're trying to fool yourself and convince yourself that there is nothing wrong, but probably there is something actually very wrong in the connection. This is where you do not have the ability to trust your own inner voice and your own gut feeling. Maybe you know that she's emotionally unavailable. Maybe you know that she's inconsistent. Maybe deep inside you know that she's probably even seeing someone else. But inside your head, you're having a war. You are trying to actually do more things for her, thinking that she will suddenly and magically become more emotionally available and consistent and choose you over the other person. And you hold on to this connection thinking that your genuine love will actually make this person fall in love with you and choose you, and everything will become rainbows and sunflowers soon. And then what happens? Anxiety in your body starts shooting through the roof. You have tightness in your chest. You have a knot in your stomach because you are not listening to yourself. So that anxiety actually comes from a place of you not acknowledging what's happening right in front of you. So if you have found yourself in these kind of situations where you are not able to trust your own self and you want to work on these attachment issues, you can reach out to me through Instagram, DM me the keyword coach to book a consultation with me. The fourth thing I want to talk about is that the real healing truly starts when you start trusting yourself. This happens when you go back into your childhood, you face your wounds, you find the root cause of this hypersensitivity and anxiety, and you firstly work on healing that, and you form a relationship with yourself. You form a relationship with your inner child, and you start pouring in that love into yourself that you did not get in your childhood. So, in a way, you don't need someone to fill a void within you because you are now forming a relationship with yourself where you are actually pouring in love into yourself. And when you do this, you start trusting your own inner voice. In a way, healing also means that you are not discrediting your own voice. You are believing in your intuition and you are not in a fight or you're not in a war with your intuition. Because think of it this way, all the relationships that you probably had where your anxiety was through the roof, it did not last because it wasn't meant to last in the very first place. Every single time I have felt anxious in a relationship, I was very right to feel that level of anxiety in my body. My body was trying to tell me that, hey, this man is not showing up right. And that's the same thing that applies to you as well. If a woman is not showing up right, you will feel that sensation of anxiety. But instead of trying to fight yourself, you have to heal yourself to actually honor that feeling, honor your intuition, honor your gut so that you don't put yourself in a connection that's going to eventually break your heart. The self trust isn't just about being calm, it's about understanding when the alarm bells in your system starts to ring. It's noticing the sign in your body and being like, there is something very familiar about this anxiety. Why is this anxiety showing up? That means my body is trying to tell me something that it's not safe for me to be in this connection. Maybe something in this connection is not safe for me. And when you actually start honoring that level of anxiety, you learn to not put yourself in that terrible pain driven situation again and again. And you actually start honoring your own peace of mind, your own mental health, and you do not become scared to walk away from a woman who is not serving you. And that anxiety could also be a sign of your soul actually saying that this isn't it. Even if you have a sense of anxiety, right? Try to communicate that with the person in front of you. Try to ask them if something is off, if something is not going right in the connection. See if their actions aligns their words. If there's no alignment between their action and their words, you are free to walk away. But let's say on one side you actually express your discomfort, your uneasiness, and this person shows up for you and actually shows up for you through actions, and that anxiety in your body actually goes away completely, then this is a good sign. You don't have to walk away in this case. But if you're constantly feeling this for like weeks or months at an end, that is a very clear signal that this isn't it. You do not need proof to validate your knowing. You do not need the permission to listen to your gut. You do not need to explain what your body feels. And remember that you are not sensitive and you are not thinking too much. You're just honoring yourself and you're stopping yourself from going into that kind of a heartbreak, which will eventually happen if you don't listen to yourself. And the men who actually trust their intuition are the men who stop chasing love because they don't want confusion in their life. They want peace in their life. They want peace to actually focus on their mission, their purpose, their work. And if you are stuck in a connection with a woman who's not showing up for you, trust me, it's going to affect other areas of your life, like your work and even your health. So I hope you start listening to your body and start honoring your own gut feeling going forward. And if you're already in a connection that is making you anxious, get out of that if that person in front of you is not showing up for you. I hope this episode was helpful, and I'll see you guys in the next one.